a fragile young girl in a wheelchair, a devoted mother who never left her side, and a story that inspired an entire community. But behind closed doors, nothing was what it actually seemed. Because in 2015, that same helpless girl, she would become the center of one of the most disturbing true crime cases in modern history. And guys, this is the story of Gypsy Rose Blanchard, a victim of unimaginable abuse and a key player in her own mother's murder. Let's begin the story. Gypsy Rose Blanchard, she was born in 1991 in Louisiana to her mother, Dee Dee Blanchard. And from the very beginning, Dee Dee claimed something was wrong with her daughter. According to her, Gypsy suffered from leukemia. She also had muscular dystrophy, she had seizures, and she also had brain damage. The list, it kept growing, and so did the sympathy from people around her. Gypsy was placed in a wheelchair, and even though she could walk, her head, it was shaved regularly. This mimicked the chemotherapy treatment that she was supposed to be having. She was fed through a feeding tube and given medications she didn't even need. But to the outside world, her mother, Dee Dee, she was a hero, a devoted mother. She was selfless, she was caring, and she was loving on her severely ill child. But in reality, this was something far more disturbing. Dee Dee, she was believed to suffer from a condition known as factitious disorder imposed on another. And this is a form of abuse where a caregiver fabricates or causes illness in someone under their care. And this is usually to gain attention and sympathy. And Gypsy, she was trapped inside that lie. As the years went on, the deception, it only deepened. Charities stepped in to help. Gypsy and Dee Dee, they received donations, they received free medical care, and even a home built by Habitat for Humanity. They were taken on trips to Disney World. They even met celebrities. They were treated like inspirations. But behind the scenes, Gypsy's life was anything but magical. She was isolated from the outside world. Her education, it was limited. Her identity, it was controlled. At one point, Gypsy didn't even know her real age. Anytime she questioned her mother about this, she was met with fear. And Dee Dee, she would threaten her. She would manipulate her. And she would remind her that no one would believe the truth. Because to everyone else, Gypsy, she was just a sick child. And Dee Dee, she had convinced the world of it. But as Gypsy grew older, something began to change. She started to realize that she wasn't actually sick. She could walk, and she could think clearly. She could see the truth. She could see the truth. Her mother had hidden this from her for years. And with access to the internet, her world began to expand even more. Late at night when her mother, Dee Dee, was asleep, Gypsy would secretly go online. And that's when she discovered something she had never truly experienced before. And that was freedom. She began talking to people, she began learning about life, and she also began imagining a future beyond her mother's control. And in 2011, Gypsy actually tried to escape. She ran away with a guy she had met online. She was hoping to start a new life. But it didn't last long. Dee Dee found her. And when she brought Gypsy home, the punishment was severe. Gypsy was physically restrained. She was threatened. And she was reminded that escape could only make things worse. But the idea of freedom, it was already planted. And guys, it was not going away. In 2012, Gypsy met someone who would change everything. And his name, it was Nicholas Gojan. The two, they connected online and they quickly formed an intense relationship. They spoke constantly, they shared secrets, they fantasized about being together and creating life together. To Gypsy, Nicholas represented escape, and for the first time, someone actually believed her. Someone saw her not as a sick child, but as a person. But their relationship, it also took a darker turn, if you would say. Their conversations, it became more intense, more obsessive, and eventually more dangerous. Gypsy told Nicholas about the abuse, about the control, and about the life she desperately wanted to escape away from her mother. And slowly, the idea of running away, it turned into something else, something permanent. Over time, Gypsy and Nicholas, they began discussing a plan. At first, it was about escape, yes, but soon it became about eliminating the one person standing in their way. And that was Dee Dee, Gypsy's mom. The plan, it developed over months. Gypsy would gather supplies. She would gather knives. She would gather gloves. She would unlock the door and she would let Nicholas in and he would do the rest. That was the plan. In June 2015, the plan was set in motion. This was 3 years after they met. And Nicholas, he traveled to Missouri, where Gypsy and Dee Dee lived. That night, Gypsy, she let him into the house. Then she went into the bathroom and she waited. From behind a closed door, she listened. She listened as Nicholas stabbed her mother to death. The one person who had controlled her entire life. She was gone. But what came next? That would change everything. After the murder, Gypsy and Nicholas, they fled. They took money and they checked into a motel. For a moment, it seemed like they had gotten away with it. They made love that night. But until one decision they made, it exposed everything. A Facebook post appeared on Dee Dee's account, and it read, "That bitch is dead." Friends and neighbors were horrified. Police were called. When they entered the home, they found Dee Dee's body. But Gypsy, she was missing. And at first, everyone feared the worst. They believed she had been kidnapped. To them, she couldn't walk, she was in a wheelchair, and she had cancer. But within days, the truth, it actually came out. Gypsy wasn't missing. She was actually running. And the police, they tracked the Facebook post. And this is how they were able to locate Gypsy and Nicholas hiding in Wisconsin. Both of them were arrested. And that's when the entire world saw something shocking. Gypsy stood up and she walked. Remember, guys, she was only walking at home. She was told by her mom to not let others see her walking, but she could walk. And the image of the helpless, wheelchair-bound girl, it shattered instantly. As details of the case emerged, the public opinion began to shift. Yes, a murder had been committed, but this wasn't a simple crime. This was a story of years of abuse, manipulation, and control. And for the first time, people began to ask, was Gypsy actually a victim or was this something more? In court, Gypsy accepted a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and she was sentenced to 10 years in prison. And Nicholas Gojan, he faced a much harsher outcome. He was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And the difference in their sentencing, it reflected a key factor. Yes, Gypsy had endured years of documented abuse. Her actions, while criminal, were shaped by a lifetime of manipulation. But the question remained, did that really justify what happened? And in December 2023, Gypsy Rose Blanchard was released from prison. After serving more than 8 years, she stepped into a world that already knew her story. And there was a lot of conflicting opinions online. She gained millions of followers online, however. She gave interviews and she began rebuilding her life. She looked healthy and she looked beautiful. But with that attention, like I mentioned earlier, it came controversies. Some people saw her as a survivor. Others, they just saw her as a murderer, and a murderer who actually avoided full accountability. But today, her story continues to spark debate across the world because the truth is, this case doesn't fit neatly into one category. It's not just about crime, it's not just about abuse, it's about what happens when both collide. And so, Nicholas is spending life in prison for something that he did for Gypsy, and now Gypsy's out and she's married and she has a child. And so he has to spend the rest of his life in prison for doing something for her, and she's just out here willy nilly enjoying life. So, what do you think? Was Gypsy Rose actually a victim of unimaginable abuse, or someone who crossed a line that can never be undone? I'm trying to figure out, like, where does she fall between? And I would love to get your opinion. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below, because sometimes the most disturbing stories are the ones where there are no clear answers, and this is one of them. And so, guys, please don't forget to subscribe and give a like, and like I said, drop a comment so we can have a chat in the comment box below, and I will see you in the next video.